got one of the biggest guys in combat sports, but you may not know who he is, Amer Abdallah. He's with the newly formed Skill Challenge Entertainment. He's got a big show in Saudi Arabia this weekend with the one and only Jake, I guess now the Truth, Paul, and Tommy Fury. How you doing, Amer?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good, man. I know you're out in Saudi. It's about 3 a.m., so we won't keep you. But listen, man, I know we've run across each other, Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. You've been a long time, I should have mentioned at the top, a longtime manager of BADOU Jack, who's also on the card, co-main event. But I wanted people to know your backstory because, like I said, you've been around for a long time, kind of doing deals. I always see deals going on behind the scenes. You're hanging out with Mike Tyson. You're coming to Dallas for these big events in my backyard. And talk about your story and how you got into the fight game. You're a world kickboxing champion. Take us back how it all got started.
That's a loaded question. That's a lot of questions there, but let's go back. I started in the martial arts. My father had me in old school Japanese karate when I was very young, 8 years old, and that progressed. And it was a phenomenal journey. I did very well, in the karate circuit, and then it progressed into the kickboxing, a little more of a full contact, a realm of sports, and again, had a very successful amateur career, almost 50 fights, 48 amateur fights. I went overseas. I fought in Jordan when my father and our family moved back overseas in Jordan. I was there for 2 years. And got some great international exposure. Then I came back to the U.S. and I turned pro, and the professional career went well. But along the way, I learned the business of the sport. And I always say, I was one of the first fighters, if not the first fighter, to promote themselves. I used to, sell the tickets, sell the sponsorships, set up the ring, do the matchmaking, all of that, and then, label the seats and fight on the cards. And so, I owned a gym. I touched every part of the sport. And after my career, 2018, I retired. Thank God. I had a great career, and I got into the business side a little bit more full time in boxing. Boxing is always where my heart was. I was always, my love for combat sports was boxing. So, I transitioned into boxing and started working with a lot of high profile athletes and represented a lot of big names. And every day I learned something new. Every day, I have that same fight still in my heart. It's just, not in the ring. It's more the business of the sport. And that's where we are now. I made, thank God, some good investments. And of course, everybody makes mistakes along the way. And I have, and I never, go back and ponder those too much. You just learn, move on, make yourself a better person, and you keep moving forward in building your business, building your the athletes that you represent. Continue to add to your arsenal, continuing to add to everything that you do along the way. And thank God it ended me up here where Prince Khalid bin Abdulaziz. You had mentioned, Skill Challenge is a new company. It's not a new company. It's been around for several years. Prince Khalid had done, I'm newly a part of the promotion, but Prince Khalid has been doing, boxing since 2019. They did the Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz 2 fight. And then after that, it was the Usyk Joshua fight. And now our third fight is the first fight that I'm on board with. And that's the Jake Paul, Tommy Fury fight with the co-feature of BADOU Jack and Ilunga Makabu.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So you mentioned the love for boxing. So you were a kickboxer. Did you not want to just box, or did you try it and just love kicking people?
No, I love, because I think I started in karate, I loved using my legs, even though I think that one of my strong points in kickboxing and why I ended up winning a world title was my boxing was always better than my legs were. But I still loved using, I still loved kicking. And, I had, thank God I did very well with that. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, what was your biggest regret in your career? And I think what it was is I wish I would have taken all of, my aspirations and all of, my physical abilities and my love for the sport. And I wish I would have transitioned into boxing. I wish my career would have transitioned. And I had the opportunity to do it, and I just didn't for whatever reason. But listen, it is what it is. I'm here now, and, it's always been a big passion of mine, and it's been the passion of mine.
And you mentioned BADOU, and I talked to you guys. I interviewed him last time you guys were in Saudi. and he, he had a tough fight. He, up there in his 30s, but I know he wants to win another title, and he's fighting for a cruiserweight title against McAboo. How did you and BADOU hook up? I know you both are in Vegas now, but where did that relationship start?
Yeah, it was actually, we were both training at Floyd's gym at the Mayweather Boxing Club in Las Vegas. He was getting ready for a fight. I was getting ready for a title defense also. And we were in the gym, we always passed by, and we were, both as Muslims, we used to always, give each other the greeting, the Muslim greeting, the salam, when we used to pass by. And then, as my career was winding down, and him and I started developing a better relationship, and we were talking about some business things, and some of the guys that I was working with, he had known about, and he said, would you ever, consider working with me also? I said, BADOU, that would be my honor. And he was the biggest name that I was working with. BADOU will always be my first love for combat sports at that big of a level, because he is very easy to work with. He listens. We have a great relationship. I think the most important thing to me, though, is he is a great man. BADOU is one of those guys that are an absolute rare gem that you find, that are just just genuinely a good man. He gives back. He's a beautiful family man. He's got a beautiful soul. I don't want to get too mushy here, but he really is one of the best men that I know, and I'm proud to stand by his side, and I'm proud to see that he got a title shot now, and we're able to make the fight happen. And here he is fighting for a third division world title. He'd be the first Muslim to ever win a world title, if he can pull it off on the 26th, to win a world title in the Middle East. And that's massive. But more for him, it's his legacy of, winning a third world title. And I think he's got a couple more fights in the tank.
I think I asked him the last time, and he, the few times I've been around him, again, at Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame and in his presence, he keeps a very low profile for a guy who's been at the top of the mountain. He's always kind of standing off to the side. He's not, look at me kind of guy.
No,
Let me ask you this, though. Ask him about the Hall of Fame. He may already be in the Hall of Fame just from what he's done, but does getting this next title guarantee him that, in your opinion?
I think, look, at BADOU is one of the only, if not the only, fighters that ever fought 8 world champions back to back. And if you look at some of the decisions that he had, they were very controversial decisions. Some almost, we consider robberies. And had BADOU not gotten a bad decision against Stevenson, against DeGale, against Bute, which ended up getting reversed anyway, you would have been talking about financially an entirely different landscape. So you have to take that into consideration in terms of where he is in his career. But of course he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. A 2-division world champion, 168 pounds, 175 pounds, WBC, WBA respectively, and now he'll be fighting for another WBC title. BADOU is an absolute Hall of Famer, and what he's done in the ring, I think, is just as important, and maybe a little bit even less important, is what he's done outside of the ring, from his humanitarian efforts and all of his philanthropy that he's been doing, and just a global ambassador for boxing, for goodwill, and he's the people's champion. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but yeah, of course he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and a guy who came from an era, even though he's still fighting, that fought everybody. You just mentioned, just rattled off a bunch of names. Unfortunately, we're in an era where that doesn't happen.
BADOU fought everybody. Everybody that was anybody in that division, he fought.
Yeah, he had some great fights, some great wars, and still going. So happy to see him out there still. Now you're working with a guy who might very well be the most polarizing guy in the sport, just for how he's come onto the scene and burst onto the scene. Coming from Disney and doing all his stuff with his brother and Jake Paul, and really has made a name for himself in the sport. For better or for worse. How did you start working? How did you get involved with Jake for this fight this weekend?
I'm a boxing purist. I'm a boxing, advocate for real boxing. And sometimes, when you deal with these influencers turned boxers, I almost feel like it's almost like a sellout, of real boxing. But you have to kind of step back. So the first boxer that I was actually involved with was KSI, JJ, when he fought Logan Paul. And when he held his camp here in the United States, they had talked and reached out about him training here in the U.S. I say here, I mean, I'm in Riyadh now, but back in Las Vegas. And they came to Vegas, and as soon as he came, you know, we built a nice relationship. And when he came back to the U.S. for the second Logan Paul fight, you know, I was his U.S. camp manager, and we set up his camp, and you know, he had a great camp, he had a great fight, and I thought to myself, I said, man, this is going to be huge. And in the fight, I mean, they sold out the Staples Center. Think about this, though, Jeff. They had in the Staples Center the undercard of Logan Paul and KSI, who were making their professional debuts, was Devin Haney, was Billy Joe Saunders. We're talking about legitimate, respected world champions. These, I mean, so that's a massive, massive stage. And that, you know, began the boxing YouTube, or influencer rather, you know, element of boxing in this whole new era that we're in. Then here comes Jake Paul out of nowhere, who by the way fought on the very first Logan Paul KSI fight. He fought KSI's brother Deji, and you know, he stuck with it. The one thing you got to give Jake Paul credit for is he's all in. The kid is all in. He sold his house, moved to Puerto Rico, set up camp there. The guy eats, breathes, lives boxing. He's not a weekend warrior that trains 8 weeks out of the year during training camp so that he can have a fight. The guy is he's legitimately trying to make a name for himself in the sport of boxing. And kudos to him. He's fighting, Tommy Fury. Now, I know a lot of people aren't big on Tommy, but look, here's what Tommy is. He's a real boxer. He's a real fighter. The kid can box his ass off, and he comes from a boxing family. He has a boxing pedigree. He has an amateur background. He's a real guy. How many people at 6 fights in their pro career take on a challenge like Tommy Fury? How many people at 5-0 take on a fight like Anderson Silva? So regardless of his boxing pedigree or not, he's got combat sports experience. How many guys at 3 and 4-0 are fighting guys like Tyron Woodley? You just don't do it. So I know a lot of people are hating on him, and they're saying he's not fighting real guys. Look at the first 10 guys that any legitimate world champion has, and compare them to the guys that Jake fought. There's an argument to be made there. And I know it's tough for a boxing purist to say this guy's good for the sport, but listen, he is good for the sport. He does bring a whole new set of eyeballs to the game. He does rejuvenate the whole fight game, and he gives you that Floyd Mayweather effect, which is, I'm going to watch him lose, right? Like Floyd used to say, most people pay to watch me lose. Some pay to watch me win, but they all pay. And that's exactly what's happening, is these guys are paying to watch Jake Paul lose. And he took a page out of that book, and it's great. The Tommy Fury fight fell through a couple of times. We were able to, secure the fight, and Prince Khalid bin Abdulaziz, who is the founder and chairman of Skill Challenge, said to me, he goes, Amer, I want you to make that fight. And initially I told him, I said, Prince, Your Highness, I said, I'd rather not make the Tommy Fury fight because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. And he said, look, if we're going to do a Jake Paul fight, I want him to fight a real guy. Tommy Fury's the fight to make. And we ended up making the fight. And here we are now, and I think it's going to be the biggest fight ever. And now we call it a hybrid card, because you got BADOU Jack on it also, which is a legitimate fight in itself.
Right. You talk about Jake, and listen, I'm probably come from the same era as you, boxing fan my whole life, grew up with the Sugar Rays, the Roberto Durans, the Hitman, Hagglers, et cetera, the Four Kings. But you can't not, you can, but to see what he's been doing, his training, and like you said, being all in, it is something to behold. And a lot of people didn't think he was going to get through Ben Askren. So
right.
Then he fights Tyron Woodley, like you said, who's a striker, puts him to sleep. So listen, you're right. He is kind of that train wreck that people are looking to see, kind of that Floyd Mayweather.
Absolutely.
But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's an intriguing fight. And that's what boxing all about is, right? That's what the promotions are all about, is for the fans to be intrigued enough to watch. And the fact that the 2 fights have fallen through gives you even more reason that you want to watch it.
How is he to work with? I've seen some pretty good interviews with him, and I've seen him on like Jim Rome. I've heard him on Jim Rome and, different outlets, the last couple of years. He seems like a genuinely good guy. He's just a great promoter.
I used to detest Jake Paul, and I told him that. He's got a great team around him. I don't think Jake could have chosen a better business partner um, and co-founder of MVP Promotions in Nikisa Badarian, a guy that genuinely looks out for him. I say this, with utmost respect. I think Nikisa taught Jake the business of boxing, and as I know, he was at a big position in the UFC, so he understands the fight game. And he kind of showed Jake the ropes and helped him make that transition from a Disney kid to an influencer, a content creator, to a legitimate fighter, to now a legitimate fighter that is deserving respect from a lot of the big names. I think along that path, he got taken under the wing of Nikisa to kind of guide him to the ABCs of the promotion. And then Jake spells his own words, but at least he has somebody to teach him the fundamentals. But I said all of that to say, to work with, they have been an absolute pleasure. I don't think I've ever worked with a team that's so easy to make these fights happen. The fight in itself, the negotiation took very little time. There were a couple of terms that we agreed to that, we had a little bit of a bumpy road, but it wasn't anything major by any means. He made, and he over delivered on all of the deliverables that we had asked for publicity wise. He came to a press conference during 2 weeks before the fight. He broke camp to come, and bottom line is he's great to work with. He's a professional. He takes this serious, and this is his business, his legacy. He understands that, and I'll tell you what, man. I told you I hated this kid when he first started. Here I am today telling you I am a big Jake Paul fan. I am.
What did he say to you? Because you wouldn't be the first person to probably tell him that, but what did he say to you, Amer?
Jake's a very confident guy. And one of the things that I loved about him, and even like when I was training fighters, I used to always say, a cocky fighter is going to be a good fighter. You don't want your guy to always be shy. And he would, he's still, to me, I'm 45 years old, so I call him a kid. Like I could legitimately be old enough to be his father. And he's a kid, and he's bashful, believe it or not. He's shy because he has that element of respect also. So he just smiles and just kind of nods his head, and he's not that guy that's going to be an abrasive asshole, disrespectful to you. He's not that guy. When he does that, he's promoting a fight, right? He's putting on a show, just like every one of these guys do. Jake is legitimately a good kid. He really is, and I say kid because he's 20 years younger than I am. I'm a fan of his. I'm a fan of what he's doing. I'm a fan of MVP. I'm a fan of them signing, talent like Amanda Serrano, and look at the amazing things that she's doing in women's boxing. I'm a fan of them signing young and upcoming talent like Ashton Sylvie, who we wanted to have on the card, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. I'm a fan of them signing. There was another female that fought, that girl's just knocking everybody out. I'm a fan of what they're doing for the sport. I really am. And, along the way, he has controversy and he has, issues with people, and that's his own thing. I don't take a position on what he talks about when he has, those spats online with, other promoters or other fighters. I'm a fan of what he's doing. And I think him making the kind of noise that he's making in the sport pays his bills. And I know it pays him very well. And at the end of the day, man, this is a business disguised as a sport. And at the end of the day, you're going to feed your family based on the money that you make, not the titles that you won. And that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, and to hear you say it's a business, I mean, him and Dana White have had one of those big feuds, and now his brother's new energy drink is the energy drink of the UFC. So it's a business.
It is a business. And look at the conglomerate. Look at this amazing entity that Dana White built. And you got to give the guy so much credit for it. Was out of the box. It was different. Everything that Dana has done or did at that time. Look, at the majority of the states banned ultimate fighting. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like, human cockfighting, where it was, this big taboo. Dana came, he regulated it, he put the right marketing behind it, and he was hated on during that time. But now look at his fan base. Now he's the biggest promoter and the best promoter, arguably, that has ever lived in combat sports, because he took something so new. So he didn't take boxing, he took the new sport. Dana White took a new sport and he evolved it into something that is now a household name. People don't say, I train mixed martial arts. They say I train UFC, right? Like he's branded that element of the sport. So along that way, he got a lot of hatred, flack, disbelief in him. And Jake Paul is doing that in his own path. All these trailblazers, all these pioneers have to endure that path. And Jake is doing that. He's that YouTube kid. He's that Disney kid that's now becoming a pro fighter, talking his talk, and he's walking that walk. But I'm telling you something. Sunday, February 26th, this kid has his hands full. Tommy's coming to fight. I mean, I can't disclose too much, but tonight, I had dinner with John Fury, Tommy Fury, and of course, we were guests of His Royal Highness Prince Khalid bin Abdulaziz, who welcomed him. This kid is confident. He's sharp. He's not coming to lay down. Jake has got a fight on his hands. If Jake beats Tommy Fury February 26th, Sunday, he has to be considered a legitimate guy. He has to be. Nobody can say anything other than that.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Does he'll never quiet the critics, not at this stage, but at least maybe silence some of those critics. So you think a win against Tommy silences many of those critics?
Let me ask you this. Did Floyd Mayweather ever silence critics? When he fought De La Hoya, that was a fight. They're like, man, now this loudmouth kid's going to get shut up by the real guy. He beats De La Hoya. You know what? De La Hoya was old. He goes and he fights and he beats up, whether it's Shane Mosley, whether it's Diego Corrales, whether it's Ricky Hatton. There's always an excuse. Floyd never, ever got his due respect. He never did. And this is not arguably, in my eyes, this is the best fighter that ever lived in our generation. When he lost speed because of his age, his boxing, he didn't get hit more because he's a natural boxer. Like he actually knew how to box. He didn't rely on just his physical abilities and his physical talents. As he got older, the Manny Pacquiao fight finally came to fruition. He's going to lose. He's going to lose. He's going to lose. He beats Manny. Oh, that's because it took 6 fights and Manny's older. Well, Floyd was older too.
Right.
He goes, he fights Canelo Alvarez. Oh, he's going to get beat up by this tough young Mexican. He beats him up. Well, you know what? It was too early for Canelo. He'll never get his due respect. Right. I can go on and on about Floyd.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of Floyd. I genuinely am. His boxing career, I'm a big fan of. And with Jake, it's going to be the same thing. Bro, I didn't think he could beat Anderson Silva. I called Nikisa and I said, brother, are you sure you guys want to take this Silva fight? I go, he's a southpaw. He's long. He's, he understands how to fight. Even though he's not a boxer, he understands how, him getting hit's not going to make him freeze up. Like he's been there before. I just don't like that fight for Jake. And he's like, yeah, I know we're going to take that chance. We're going to do that. So, and they did. And here they are. And
if he wins, he gets ranked by the WBC. So that's
controversial in itself.
Yeah. Interesting there. But we'll wrap up here in a minute. I'm here with Amer Abdallah. Got a big fight in Saudi Arabia. He's there right now, 3 a.m. We're keeping him up here in the States. But talking about the big fight this weekend, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. Let's switch gears. BADOU Jack, we mentioned him earlier. He's the co-main event, fighting guy Macaboo, who I believe was going to fight Canelo at one point. There was some talk about Canelo jumping up for that. What challenge does that guy Macaboo pose for BADOU besides a new weight class?
Well, look, the weight class is a massive undertaking in itself. BADOU won the WBC super middleweight title, and then he moved up and he won the WBA light heavyweight title. And when you gradually move up, you're gradually dealing with naturally bigger guys. Mind you, BADOU, I believe he's always wanted to fight at cruiserweight, and he had a tough time making light heavyweight, especially in his recent years. But now you're dealing with guys that's a natural cruiserweight, that's been a natural cruiserweight for quite some time, and he's knocking out natural cruiserweights. Now, in the cruiserweight division, BADOU has yet to face a guy of Macaboo's caliber. He has yet to face, a title contender in the top 5 in that division. He has yet to be pushed in the cruiserweight division. He is getting a little bit older. There's a lot of dangers to this fight. But at the end of the day, BADOU Jack is also a very intelligent fighter. He's a very young fighter in the way that he moves. He has not taken a lot of punishment in his career. I mean, I know you think back of the big cut, but he's enough. Yeah. It was more this way.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that's right. That's
yeah. And you know, he's healthy. He's never ever abused his body in terms of alcohol and drugs and any of that. You know, he lives a very, very, humble, clean lifestyle. So, and I think that attributes a lot to boxing. So, and look at Makabu can punch, man. I mean, this guy's left-handed. It's very similar to an Adonis Stevenson left hand. You know, Badou's been successful against southpaws and southpaws that can punch, but the question does come is, does Badou Jack have enough to dethrone, this would be Makabu's third title defense. Does he have enough to dethrone him? And that's a very intriguing fight to make. I think there's a lot of appeal to it, especially in the region here in the Middle East. And most importantly, Prince Khalid said, I want to have this fight here and I want to give Badou that opportunity. And I'd like to bring Makabu here and let's make the title defense here. And here we are.
That's great. I'm excited to see what he does on that fight. So what, Amer, what is the long-term goal in Saudi? I mean, there's so, as you know, there's so many big fights that just aren't getting made. You mentioned the fights, AJ and Ruiz too, the Usyk fight with AJ. Could we, now you're hosting, Tommy Fury and his dad, can there be Fury and Usyk for undisputed heavyweight? I don't know if there's enough money for like a Spence Crawford, like, are you guys is the goal to get as many of the big fights over to Saudi, or what's the strategy behind this?
That's a great question, Jeff. Let me tell you something. This is one of the reasons that, of course, I joined a skill challenge. First of all, I have, a genuine belief and unparalleled belief in the vision of Prince Khalid bin Abdulaziz. He loves boxing. What he doesn't love are the politics that surround boxing. He wants to put on the biggest fights, the best fights with the best fighters for the fans to see. That's what he wants to deliver. And he can deliver that. And he has delivered that. We're not tied to any network. We're not tied to any promoter. We are, an events promotion company that is putting on the biggest and best fights for the fans to see. And he's going to announce something in this next week that's going to change the face of boxing, with his initiatives, with his vision and what he's looking to do. And I think every single promoter that wants the best for boxing, I'll say that again, every promoter that truly wants the best for boxing will welcome this initiative and welcome this vision of Prince Khalid into boxing and being able to put on these best fights. And he's more than happy to put, his money where his vision is. And he'll pay for the right fights to make the biggest fights and the best fights. And, of course, it's all calculated, but that's what his vision is to put on these amazing fights. And I think it's going to be a phenomenal, phenomenal adventure. I think it's going to be a great chapter in the history of boxing. And it's going to be based right out of here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I couldn't be more humbled and proud to be a part of it.
And this announcement will come in the next week, Amer?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I believe, I can't talk about what he's going to do or how he's going to do it. Prince Khalid is a very decisive man. He's a military man. As a former fighter himself, he loves the sport of boxing. So, you never tell a fighter what to do, and certainly you never tell a prince what to do. We all, follow that direction, and I know what his beliefs are and what his vision are, and I believe that this week he's going to make that announcement of what he's looking to do.
All right. Well, I think that's some potential breaking news there. We didn't quite get what that is, but some good things for boxing. So we'll wrap it up there. Amer Abdallah, again, running the Skill Challenge Entertainment Group out of Saudi Arabia, working with the Prince over there, looking to do the biggest and baddest fights, which is, I think, music to the boxing fans' ears. We're all, this generation, everybody's waiting for all the big fights to take place. You got a big fight this Sunday on ESPN Plus pay-per-view, February 26th. Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. Can't wait for that, Amer. I appreciate the time. I know the scheduling is a little bit complicated out there from the States, but man, it's great to see you on screen. Hope to see you again live soon. And best of luck this weekend and in the future.
I appreciate it so much, Jeff. Great job. Keep doing what you guys are doing and keep getting that news out there and all your support with boxing. Thank you for all you do also.
Thanks, man. Good luck.
All right. Take care, brother.